Welcome to High Isle, the serene, well-kept retreat for Tamriel's well-to-do. And somehow they thought it was a good idea to let me run around. That's right, I've been causing some chaos on High Isle for about a week now and playing on a preview server. The gates have now opened on the embargo and I can finally spill the beans on what I saw there, including the new features like the Tales of Tribute card game. I also had the chance to go to a presentation by the ESO game devs, and they talked about High Isle, gave us some behind the scenes insights of how they created it, and answered some of our questions. Before we dive in, keep in mind this was not a capture event, so we weren't allowed to directly capture video or images from the preview servers themselves. What I have is a collection of beautiful B-roll footage, which has been provided to us by Bethesda. So when it comes to stuff like Tales of Tribute and the new companions, unfortunately, we just weren't allowed to get footage of them. So use your imagination, I guess. I believe in you. The ESO community have great imaginations. So in terms of the actual area of High Isle, you actually get two major islands. So there's High Isle, which is the main island. It's kind of like, I can't show you the maps, but it's kind of like a donut shape, which goes around like this. And there's a central lake in the middle. There are some streams and some rivers running throughout. And then you get a massive amount of coastline around the outside. And then apart from High Isle, there is also Amanos, which is the separate island that they've talked about on live streams. This is the exact opposite of High Isle. It is not pretty, it is not filled with nobles. It's actually the dumping ground for High Isle. So Amanos is the prison island. It's very jungly, it's like a rainforest there, and it also hosts the prison of Caldera, which is where they put all of their undesirables from High Isle. One question I always get asked by the community when I play on preview servers is, how big is it? You're very obsessed with size, guys. It's not the size that matters, okay? It's how they use it. But they have said that it's very similar in size to previous expansions, and definitely I think because people were worried about it being smaller because it was a chain of islands, you're not losing out on the amount of area that we have in this chapter. I was also really pleasantly surprised by the variation in architecture and different biomes that we get, even within the same chapter as well. So the first area you start out in when you arrive in High Isle is Gonfalon Bay, which is the main quest hub for the area. In Gonfalon Bay, you have a mixture of these adorable little thatched cottages with wooden beaming and ivy growing up the outside of the houses. And then you also have these great big towering castles with knights and splendor. So there's a mixture of different medieval European inspired things going on here. A lot of this castle architecture is very impressive, and ESO is so good at doing scale and making you feel really small and the buildings feel really massive ahead of you. They have these very grand castles and keeps, and one of the most impressive belongs to House du Fort, and they have a castle called Castle Novaya, which is on one side of the island. And this is the one you keep seeing in all the press images where they have the jousting lanes as well. Can confirm, ask the devs, no jousting minigame. Sorry guys, I know all of you were saying as soon as you saw it in the reveal, jousting minigame? Can we joust now? As of yet, no plans for jousting. It's a whole other system to add into the game, so I understand, but I am gonna go and quietly cry in the corner now. The further you head out into High Isle, the more you leave that pomp and grandeur behind. And you'll find there's more of a Celtic style going on this side of the island. Over in the west, for example, you have Stonelaw Grove, which is inhabited by druidic people living in harmony with nature and the natural magics of the world. There's also more of a dark Gothic architecture on this side of the island, so there's a few very creepy old castles that have an Elden Ring feel to them. My personal favourite style of architecture from this zone, despite my love of castles, was actually the thatched cottages. There's so many little thatched cottages dotted throughout the countryside. There's amazing cobblestone towers reaching up covered in ivy, and I was just all for that. It's really beautiful, and it's a style that we haven't seen in Elder Scrolls Online before. But for the most part in High Isle, you will see castles and extreme luxury. This is the holiday place of rich nobles. And Rich, who's on the team for ESO, even described it as Las Vegas in Elder Scrolls Online. What happens in High Isle stays in High Isle. But if High Isle is perfect and pristine and nothing is wrong here at all, why are we there? there always has to be a dark side. I'm not gonna lie, I'd love to see an expansion where nothing goes wrong and there's no bad guys. Everything is fine. You're just going on a nice holiday. In terms of this storyline though, it's very different to ones we've seen in Elder Scrolls Online in the past. There's no great cosmic threat, there's no big baddie. It is all political intrigue and backstabbing. I'm not going to go too deep into the story because you don't want any spoilers and neither do I. But if you saw the letters that got sent out to content creators before High Isle was dropped, you will know they were from Lady Arabelle DeVoe, and I am delighted to confirm that Lady Arabelle DeVoe features heavily in the main storyline. And I'm just going to say, if you're a big fan of the Investigator Vale series, you're not going to be disappointed. In terms of other questing aside from the main questline on High Isle, I had a really fun time. Like, there's some really funny quest lines, and I feel like they're leaning into the humorous side, especially with all these chivalrous knights. You can imagine what kind of adventures they send you on. So many people have asked about naval combat and whether this expansion is going to have any elements of like ship fighting, moving ships, anything like that. They have confirmed there's no actual naval combat system, but they have been able to get some really cool movement into the ships that we haven't seen previously. So there'll be ships moving around in the ocean. I actually saw that for myself. I was on the coastline and this great big galleon came by and the water was spreading out before it, and it was just a really awesome moment. So it's a nice thing to see. I don't know whether we're actually gonna like be on ships fighting at any point, but in terms of environmental stuff, they have added in little touches like that. Of course, in any zone we're exploring, we always have the world events going on. And our world events for this chapter are the volcanic vents. There is actually an active volcano near High Isle called Mount Firesong, and occasionally these vents open up and Daedric creatures spill forth from them. In terms of difficulty, it is on the level of Harrow Storms rather than other world events, which are a little bit harder to get through, so it's nice to have that extra challenge. There is also a brand new dungeon called Crimson Coin. There's a blood mage who lives in a cursed castle, and you have to venture in there with a squire to find his knight who's gone missing. I really liked the theme of this place. It felt very Dark Souls from the second I went in there. Where there be ships, there do be pirates, and we have a new 12-player trial, which is Dreadsail Reef. The noble houses are fed up with the pirates and send you out to deal with them. It's roughly the same size as Rockgrove, and it has 3 bosses, each with their own unique hard modes. I did get to meet both Ember, the new Khajiit companion, and Isobel, who is the new Breton companion. Ember is wonderful. I must say we had a wonderful time together. I can't do her accent. Why am I talking like Jester? I'm only going to talk about the very beginning of their quest lines because you're going to want to do them yourselves and find out what happens in their story. But Ember is the apprentice to a wizard. She has a bit of a magical mishap and needs your help to sort it out. It's clear that she's very clever. She's a bright student with a passion for the arcane arts, but she can be a little bit impulsive, even if she is talented, and take on things that are a bit more complicated than she can manage. I wouldn't say Ember is on the evil side of the spectrum. None of the companions they've done so far are, but she's definitely morally flexible. She didn't grow up in the best of backgrounds and sometimes had to thieve and cheat to survive. She says herself that she doesn't really respect authority, and she doesn't get how fancy symbols and titles make you better than anyone else. In contrast, we have Isobel Valois, who is the new Breton companion. I feel like when they released the companions, so far it's been in a group of 2, one who's super moral and the other who just doesn't give a shit. So Isobel is a knight aspirant taking part in something called the Sapphire Tourney, and her companion quest involves helping her with the various missions she has to do to prove herself. She has a strict moral code, she's very much a chivalrous knight, and she does not abide by cheating, stealing, any kind of law breaking at all. But despite that, I don't think she has a stick up her posterior. She's actually really sweet, and that's what I wasn't expecting. I thought she'd be very noble knight. She tries to be cool, but she just can't. There's one point where she's trying to think of a swear word and she can't think of a swear word, and I was just like, bless you, you are too pure for this world. She really admires the Undaunted, and she's also a huge Lyris Titan-born fangirl. If you ask her about Lyris, she actually blushes and she's like, oh, I love Lyris. In terms of the mechanics for both Ember and Isobel, Ember is very much a mage, so she has 3 trees, the lightning caller, the mischievous caster, and the playful schemer, lightning caller being more damage focused, mischievous caster being more CC focused, and then she's also got some protection and some healing on her playful schemer tree. She also has the Khajiit racial passive, so she's got an increased crit chance, and she has increased damage done. Isobel, on the other hand, is very much a traditional melee knight. She has a skill tree called Blazing Might with all her damage abilities, Brilliant Shield for all her defensive buffs and abilities, and also Healing Grace if you need her to be a healer. So both of them have capabilities to be tank, healer, and DPS like our previous companions. Isobel also has the Breton passive, which is called Enchanted, which decreases ability cooldowns and damage taken. Whilst we're on the subject of companions, I wanted to quickly mention that during the Q&A section, somebody asked whether romance was on the cards anytime soon for our companions. And the devs did say, not in this chapter, but it would be a pretty big miss if they didn't do something with romance, considering how much everyone has been asking for it. So whilst it's not a confirmation, it is them acknowledging that they know the community wants it, and maybe we'll see it sometime in the future. I'm not gonna lie, I would love to see them release something on Valentine's Day and then like make a whole new Valentine's festival where you go around collecting items to give your companions for their favor. Like, it would just be so cool. They need a Hearts Day festival hosted by Sanguine, just saying. Would love to see it. Gonfalon Bay is also where you'll be able to check out one of the most anticipated features coming with High Isle, which is Tales of Tribute. And there actually is a gaming hall in the middle of Gonfalon Bay where you can go and challenge NPCs to Tales of Tribute matches and hone your skills as a beginner. There's going to be Masters of Tribute that you can challenge all over Tamriel, but this is where you begin your adventure. Like other skill lines, you can gain rank by playing Tales of Tribute and level yourself up to gain rewards. If you get good enough, you can even challenge the club's founders. Tribute is going to have leaderboards, so there will be seasonal leaderboards for PvP mode and rewards for those that can finish in the top few placements. Tribute is also going to have a finder, so similar to the dungeon finder, you can queue up and it will find you someone of similar skill to play against. You can also challenge anyone in game to a game of Tribute or somebody from your friends list and play against them. You can't currently spectate someone else's game whilst they're playing, but maybe this is something they'll consider adding in the future. I would love to host a Tales of Tribute tournament. When I played it, it was very much a work in progress. Nothing was done, the final sparkle and shine hadn't been added to it, but I was able to see the bare bone mechanics that were going on. First of all, I think it's important to mention that they have been very clear that there will be no pay to win in Tales of Tribute. As soon as everybody heard card game, I feel like the whole community freaked out and they were like, they're gonna monetize this card game, it's gonna turn into a loot box thing. So all of the cards are earned in-game through in-game activities. You can earn cards by doing achievements and exploring in the world and antiquities. So it's going to be a whole in-game system, and it's not going to be something you have to chuck real money at. They might have some paid stuff in the future, who knows, but it will probably be cosmetic stuff. Like they might have skins for the card packs, they might have different looks for the table that you play on that you can buy, but it doesn't look like they're going to fully monetize the game. If you've played Hearthstone, there's like things you can flick on the side, there's stuff to fiddle with whilst you're playing. It'd be really cool if you had like gambler's charms, like you had like a pocket watch you could flick open or like a coin you could toss. That's just my 2 cents. I think it'd be really cool to have something to fiddle with, and I wouldn't mind that being monetized. Anyway, Tales of Tribute, how does it actually work? So at the beginning of the game, each person chooses 2 decks. Those 2 decks are then combined together into the pool of cards that you play with. Instead of being a curated deck builder game where you have made the deck before you go in to fight someone, you're actually both building the deck as you play. Sounds really weird, right? But it kind of works. And then you also have this area in the middle of the play screen called the Tavern. So the Tavern in the middle essentially is a shop that you can buy cards from. You pay a gold cost and then that card becomes yours. When a card is bought or removed from the Tavern, it's immediately replaced by a new one. So each player has 5 cards in their hand on their turn, and you can play cards as freely as you like. It doesn't cost you mana to actually play cards. A lot of the cards will give you gold, which you can just play to give you gold to buy things from the shop. There's also action cards, which make up the bulk of the deck. So that's things like drawing cards, discarding cards, removing cards. So this isn't a direct combat card game. You're not looking over the board and seeing your enemy commander's health and then sending creatures to kill them. It's more a game of strategy and intrigue. So there's two ways to win. The first way is to get to 40 prestige points and hold it for your opponent's turn. You'll be constantly building up prestige from the effects on your cards, so it's a race to get to 40 prestige points. The second way to win is to make all 4 of the patrons favor you at the same time. Now this is the other mechanic that's going on at the same time as you're drawing cards and doing all of your business buying things from the shop. There are patrons at the side, and you can think of these as the suits of cards. So these patrons are actually based on which decks you chose at the beginning. Each deck has a patron, so there'll be 4 patrons at the side that you've chosen combined. All of the patrons start off as neutral and just pointed towards the middle of the screen, but if you interact with the patron and pay their price, their portrait will turn towards you. All of the patrons have a different price to pay in order to gain their favor. So for example, the Duke of Crows, if you give him all of your gold, he'll give you that gold -1 in power. If you manage to get someone favoring you, it doesn't stay that way, and your opponent can go and pay their price to turn their portrait back to their side. So whilst you're playing, you have to keep an eye and see if the patrons are being turned away from you, because if all 4 get turned away from you, it's game over. So the tavern in the center where you can buy cards for gold remains open for the whole game, and you can keep buying cards with different effects, and then they go into your pile and get redrawn again. All of the cards will have a symbol on to show you which collection they're part of and which patron they belong to. And there's also some combo effects if you play multiple cards from the same patron in your turn. There are 2 main resources: gold and power. Gold can be used to buy cards from the tavern or bribe some of the patrons on the side, and power is used to directly upgrade your prestige. At the end of your turn, gold gets wiped. So if you summon more gold than you need to buy from the tavern, it's just not going to be there at the end of your turn. Power, however, gets converted to prestige at the end of your turn. And if you remember, prestige, getting to 40 prestige is one of the ways that you win. There's also a card type called agents, which as a new player, I didn't really encounter them because they were usually quite high cost cards. But the idea with agents is they're one of the only card types that stay out on the board. You play them and they remain on the board, and they usually have some kind of boon that you can activate every turn. These remain on the board until you choose to discard them or your enemy decides to do something about them. Hopefully that made some sort of sense. It's really hard to describe when I don't have any visuals to show you. I really respect them for going in a different direction with this, and I don't think I've ever played anything quite like it. When the devs were talking about it, they said you can kind of compare it to Ascension or Dominion if you know of either of those games in the way that it plays. So much more based on resource building. But what do I think of it? Oh, that's a hard one. For me, it just felt quite slow. And I'm not talking too much about the actual length of time the game took, because it was around 15 minutes, which was the intended time for the game. But the pacing of it was a little bit off. I wasn't able to get into the kind of endgame experience for Tales of Tribute. We only had that very beginning quest to do and some very starter NPCs to challenge. So you have 5 cards a hand, and in the basic deck, so many of those are just to draw 1 gold. So I managed to get myself into a loop where every turn I had 5 cards, which gave me 5 gold. And everything in the shop at that point was over 5 cost. So neither me or my opponent could do anything because we were both playing with basic decks. And we were just like, well, I have 1 card that gives me 1 power every other turn. So yeah, at the moment, it's just not got that punch to it. I think it's really tricky because when you're playing a game where you have minions fighting each other, you have that kind of, oh yeah, I just took down that minion, I feel cool. But so far, Tales of Tribute doesn't have those oomph moments. Very technical games design term here. So in conclusion, is it fun? Yeah, I can see the seeds of something that's going to be really cool and unlike anything else that I've seen before in a card game, to be honest. So I'm really excited to see what they do with it. At the moment, there were 8 collectible patron decks and then 1 neutral starter deck, which everybody shares. There are also apparently upgradable cards in every deck. We weren't able to get to that stage on the preview servers, but apparently you can upgrade individual cards. There was also something that I thought might be really fun that was mentioned, but we didn't get to check out on the test servers, which was the idea of riddles. So from playing Tales of Tribute, you would gain riddles about these hidden locations, and then you can go there and use them to upgrade cards. But we really don't know much about that system yet. Maybe they'll drop some more info about it on the dev streams. There's actually a whole new section of your collections tab just for Tales of Tribute, and you can scroll through and see all of your cards. And then to unlock new cards, it's all entirely through playing. So you can get some through achievements, you can get some through exploring in the game as well, and you will be able to go and play Tales of Tribute throughout Tamriel, not just on High Isle. This is very much their take on what an actual card game inside of the Elder Scrolls world would look like, and I think it fits, and the way that it integrates with the story is really nicely done. I can believe that characters in this universe would actually play this game. So there we go. I think that's all the sneak peeks I have for High Isle for now, but do let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I'm sure there's something that I missed. If you're new around these parts, do make sure to come say hi over on Twitch sometime. I'm quite often live with Elder Scrolls Online, and I'd love to answer some of your questions live too. But for now, happy adventuring, and I will see you all in High Isle.